Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar. I am Amanda Lee. I'm Senior Marketing Manager at Simpleview Granicus, and I'm thrilled to be your host for what promises to be a very insightful and inspiring session. Today, we are diving into the power of collaboration and data in securing successful bids for conferences and events. And as many of you who are joining will know, winning these bids often requires combined efforts and multiple stakeholders over a lot of time. So today's discussion will really shine a light on how having really useful data will be a helpful tool in winning those conferences and events, with some real practical examples of how that's happening in practice already. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to watch afterwards, so please use the chat to introduce yourselves, where you're from, and share any of your insights as we go along. We're joined by a fantastic panel of experts today who have a wealth of experience and perspective to this topic. So please join me in welcoming Sarah Fleming, Managing Director and owner of SFA Connect, Thomas Mauch, Regional Director for Europe at ICCA, and Joanna De Villa, Customer Success Consultant here at Simpleview. Over the course of this session, we're going to explore how ICCA has leveraged Simpleview's technology to power its business intelligence database, and how data is really helping destinations around the world win more conferences and events. So we're also going to hear Sarah share some great examples of how they're using that data in practice. And we really encourage engagement throughout this session. So please feel free to ask questions using the Q&A function, and we'll do our best to address those at the end of the session. And before we dive into this conversation, I'd like to give each of our panelists a moment to introduce themselves. So let's start with Sarah, and then we'll hear from Thomas and Joanna.
Thank you very much, Amanda. And hello, yes, Sarah Fleming, Managing Director and a founder of SFA Connect. We are a consultancy firm based in the UK, but working for clients across the world. So from Canada all the way across to New Zealand and everywhere in between, predominantly providing research and lead generation support to convention bureaus and tourist boards and venues. And I'm delighted to be here today, and thank you for the opportunity, Amanda.
Hi, so taking over from Sarah, Thomas Mauch. So with ICCA since January this year. My previous hat was working in venues and within the events and business events sector for the last 18 years. Glad to see some, or actually a lot of my members over here, and a lot of familiar faces joining us. So welcome and thank you for joining us today. So ICCA, as a membership organization, serves both the business event sector, both venues, destinations, meetings management, and and transport providers to the associations that are booking across the globe. We've got 1,200 members globally, of which 50% are located in the European region. And yeah, insightful conversation about how we support our members using database and how Simpleview has facilitated a great relationship over the years.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm glad to be a part of this panel. As Amanda, I work with Simpleview Granicus company. My name is Joanna De Villa. I'm a customer success consultant with that team, just shy of 3 years. Previous to that, I was a marketing manager at a destination, Visit Lauderdale specifically, and very proud to work with that team as a client, and now on their side, just kind of helping and assisting other clients across the globe to promote their destinations.
Thank you so much, and thank you for each of you for taking some time to join us today. As I said, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. From our practice conversation beforehand, I know that there's a lot of really useful insights that we'll be able to delve into today. And to start with, Joanna, I'm going to come to you. Could you tell us a little bit about ICCA's collaboration with Simpleview and about how we're supporting them from a technology point of view, just to set the scene?
Absolutely. ICCA actually began internal discussions about upgrading their existing association meetings database to enhance operations and increase engagement while delivering more value. And in 2022, Simpleview was chosen as their partner because of their expertise, not only from a technology standpoint, but also because of their expertise within the meetings industry. And since then, we've worked together to research, scope, and ultimately launch what is now the ICCA BI tools. I know at our business intelligence database as you do, and their CMS and website. I'm very lucky to be their main point of contact. I work closely with a great team that supports both their platforms and continues to improve them as their needs evolve. So very happy that I get to work with them on a day-to-day, and happy to see this side of what we do from the back end and now how it helps all destinations.
Brilliant, thank you. And Thomas, how, from an ICCA point of view, are you and your members able to use this to support your activities on a broad scale?
We weren't going to repeat what I was going to say earlier about muting and unmuting, but yeah. So I mean, it was a tall ask in terms of being able to collate 60 years or more worth of data, and we needed to find a partner that was able to facilitate that transition from our previous system over to Simpleview. And yeah, 60 years worth of Congress data is immensely important to a large majority of our membership in terms of bidding and being able to find ways to, find that golden nugget as to winning a Congress. It doesn't matter if it's normally the usual suspects. There could be an emerging trend. Let's say a couple of years ago, maybe AI wasn't such a huge talking tool. Now, obviously, the data is starting to pick up and the trend is starting to pick up, and Simpleview has allowed us to create a modern and much more cleaner and fresher approach to being able to sift through the data and look through over 12,000 association database records and being able to let our members actually utilize that to its full capacity. And Simpleview have been incredibly useful in terms of meeting our sort of demands and being able to be flexible about making that happen over the last couple of years. So to our members, it's incredibly important. And yeah, I think Sarah will elaborate on it at a later point today, but I think it is incredibly useful. And yeah, you've made it a very sort of much better than what it was in the past, much more user-friendly.
Oh, brilliant. That's great to hear. And I think what would be really interesting to know from each of you, and perhaps maybe starting with Sarah, as we've not managed to ask you a question at this point in time, but how important would you say data is and is becoming in the decision-making process for the meetings and events sector?
Well, it's no surprise, but in my view, data is everything. The more you know in advance, if you are the buyer or you are the seller, is crucial. We see that in everything that we do in our day-to-day lives, and it's no different in terms of the association market, in terms of the associations and how they're selecting their locations, and also in terms of destinations and how you're doing new business development. And I often ask clients if they ever stop to think about how much they spend on sales and marketing in terms of trade shows, advertising, sales missions, etc., compared to how much they spend on data and understanding who their customer is and what they really want and need. So yeah, data in my view is everything. Having a data-driven approach to your new business development is essential, as well as a sector-first approach, which I'll talk about later. But yeah, details matter, and the data's out there for us to get. I mean, things have accelerated; they're getting better every day with the advancement with AI, but also tools like ICCA help to refine a new business development strategy.
Brilliant. Thomas, Joanna, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
I wanted to just add, I mean, the data that we have within the database doesn't just serve the members as a, tool for bidding. It's also for them to be able to benchmark themselves to other destinations and be able to showcase that. And one tool that we have, or one thing that we do have, is the sort of Globe Watch that we launched at Frankfurt, where this destinations and the sort of top destinations are able to showcase how many events and business events they've actually hosted over the last year. And without that data, it would not be possible. So it allows destinations and nations to be able to showcase and say, okay, well, this is where our strength is. And this allows them to go to their governments and their national sort of organizations to be able to say, hey, you know what, this is actually really important. And I think the biggest messaging out of our industry is to actually show the value of, you know, what the business event sector does, be it associations, corporate, or whatever. But it allows people to see what the value is. And I think it's still being muddled up a little bit in tourism, and where we need to define those two is basically showing the value that business events does. And the tools like Simpleview and what Sarah does in terms of strategic business development allows those destinations to be able to showcase that. So that, yeah, I wanted to add on that.
I think that's a really interesting point, isn't it? Being able to use that data to demonstrate your value, especially when globally budgets are tight for organizations that are trying to support their cities. I know, Joanna, we have that insight from our different clients across the globe of how being able to justify your existence a lot of the time is half the battle, not only winning the work, but being able to get that investment. So that's a really interesting other side of the coin to get data insights. That's really interesting. Joanna, do you have anything to add in terms of how data is driving decision making that you would like to contribute?
I would echo both these thoughts, because it does, basically influence everything from the marketing strategy and budget allocation standpoint. But with AI, the ability to personalize meaningful experiences using that behavioral data component, I think it's setting a new standard and expectation in the industry. So that would be my thought.
Definitely. And I think that beautifully leads me on to my next question, really, which was around what trends are you all seeing within the industry, i.e., use of AI or personalization for events? Like, what kind of trends are you seeing that convention bureaus and destinations who are on this webinar might be interested in? I'll pick on you, Thomas.
On me. I was going to say. So I think one thing is apparent is that AI is unavoidable, and using it within data is extremely valuable. And what I do see is that there is an opportunity for, and ICCA is very, very well aware of it, that we need to, that AI is going to be driving our database in the future. So yeah, there is work to be done, and there is work being done on that. But one thing we do see, and this is from what I'm sort of getting from my European membership, is that, there's still a huge relevance to in-person meetings. It's quality over quantity, let's say that. But one thing that is becoming a far more worrying thing is the rise of, let's say, the deep fakes and like the Google VO3 tools that are able to recreate realistic scenes, but without real humans involved. And that sort of strengthens the voice of having in-person meetings, and that strengthens that argument to say that we need to meet people in person because we need to validate if something is credible or not. And I think that is where that sort of turning point is happening now, where people see that in person is actually going to be far more valuable in terms of actually experiencing that face-to-face contact. And I'm a huge advocate for it. I do believe that there is an element of hybrid within this world. But I think from my side and from what I understand is where we're seeing a huge influx is people trying to actually make sense of what is credibility nowadays, and where there is actual, is something being generated outside of our control. And that's where I think in person will be able to facilitate that, authenticity, if I can use that word. So I see that as a big thing. But AI in terms of data management and data extraction and stuff, I think that is extremely useful, and the world is becoming extremely agile in terms of adopting that. But I think there's a lot of work still to do with around AI itself within data management, and I can see a huge potential in like the medical sectors and using that AI elements coming in there, but not for me in terms of in person. I think we need to sing the notes of saying people need to meet in person, because that is where the value will be, and make sense of the noise. That's what I want to say.
Brilliant, thank you. And Sarah, I know that you have a broad range of clients that you work with, and you must have quite a lot of insights to share around kind of the trends that you're seeing in that in-person versus AI, or how to best use AI for the industry.
Well, in terms of AI for the industry, in my arena, it's going to be all about the data and uncovering research opportunities using the tool that's there in terms of AI. But in terms of trends in general, I think I would say that there is, winning business in this association market is much less transactional than it used to be. And the salespeople, marketing people within our arena, whether you are a convention bureau or a convention center, are needing to become many, many different types of people. They're consultants, they're advisors, they're partners, they're just strategic thinkers. It's not just about receiving an inquiry and working out whether you've got the right rates, dates, and space for that particular inquiry. And so we are needing to really drill down and research into the association themselves. What's important to them? What is their objective? What's the purpose of the meeting? Where are they trying to go? And how well can your city, venue, or destination match with that objective of the association? So again, it's all about research. So data just isn't about just the numbers that are in the ICCA database or the number of conferences in the ICCA database or wherever. It's about doing your homework. It's about uncovering opportunities that match with your city sector priorities, understanding that. So yeah, it is a complex world to be in one sense. But the good news is a lot of that information is out there and readily available and easily digestible. And I have to say our new workmate, ChatGPT, or whoever it is, which framework you use, is entirely brilliant in that regard.
Brilliant, thank you. And I know, Joanna, from internally that there's a lot of talk around AI and how that implements, but are there any other kind of digital trends or things like that within the industry that we are particularly noticing with clients?
I think the hot topic is AI. There are clients that will, want to collaborate and find out what we're doing from that standpoint. So it's definitely the one thing that I feel everybody's interested in knowing more about as it continues to evolve. Outside of AI, I think just I'm not sure that there's anything else that's hot topic at the moment, to be honest with you. But I'm sure that whatever that is, we have a ton of like digital marketing team members that would be the right team to discuss it a little bit more in depth.
I do know that we've just launched an AI resources page as well, like bringing together insights that we've kind of seen from across the industry. But it's such a rapidly evolving topic that I think each day everyone's figuring out a new way of working with AI or kind of utilizing it as a tool. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to develop. I particularly like the idea of using it for that research and kind of understanding your market, your competitors, and other elements. That is a really useful tool, not in necessarily kind of putting things straight out to market, but to assist you as a kind of research assistant almost, as that AI is really interesting.
Absolutely. With the caveat, and I must say, look, it is absolutely brilliant, but sometimes it's a bit like a naughty member of your team. It's often a little bit lazier than it is on other times. It will depend on what time of day you're using it as to how effective it is. Interestingly, when America wakes up, we kind of slow down, I'm afraid, at this stage because it's pulling power from different places. So the caveat is don't just use it and assume that everything that's coming out is going to be accurate. It is, you need to verify your facts. As you say, it's rapidly evolving, and I'm sure at some stage we won't need to do that. But it's all about the prompts and the information that you're asking it to give out isn't always necessarily what you're expecting to get from it. So it's a brilliant tool. Wouldn't be without it, I must say. But it's not just about drafting emails or LinkedIn posts. There is huge amount that it can do. And anything that you do as a human that is relatively or at all process driven, that machine's going to be doing it or can do it now.
And if I can add to that, I think validation, you've mentioned it there, is to validate it. I think we still there is a human element still involved in this. And, coming back to the database from ICCA, our data needs to be validated still by humans, and look at it and see whatever members are submitting, is actually in fact a genuine event, or that is within the parameters of something that goes into the database. So it is a wonderful tool, AI and all of that. It will make it far simpler and far quicker. But validation, at the end of the day, I think, we mustn't look at the first responses from something like an LLM to say, okay, that is true and that is the one. Because I actually read an article recently where it said that we've been stripped of our choice using LLMs now, because it gives you one answer and you think that that answer is the correct one. Whereas if you were on Google, you would have 7 or 12 or 15 different pages where you could get different sources to information. So I think for processors, it's a phenomenal tool at this point, and it's going to get even better. But I think validation by a human is still going to be something that is going to be necessary in the future, or at least in the short term.
Mm.
I
Very
do
good.
want to add one thing though, Amanda. I do have a client in the middle of uh, launching something soon that is related to augmented reality. So I'm intrigued by what that's going to look like on their website. We're working with that third party that put that together. So I'm wondering if, augmented reality will be the next big trend.
I mean,
Would love
that's
to.
something that I think it would be interesting to explore in terms of the future opportunities of the industry. Of do we see that as our augmented event something that's in our future, or is smart technology going to be something that needs to be built into events for that user experience? That was a question I was going to ask you later on in our discussion, but it feels like now's a good time before we ask Sarah to share us some of her insights of where do we see that future going? Because I don't think in-person events are by any means going away. If anything, I think, as you mentioned, Thomas, that human connection is more important to people having been through COVID and come back out of it. Do you have any thoughts of that kind of future impact of opportunities that data presents, or AI and technology presents?
Sarah?
I'm not sure I'm really the best place to, I mean, I'm not a planner, I'm not an event organizer, was many years ago, but certainly there was no AI then. I think we just have to keep coming back to the fact that, as Thomas said, the in-person element is always going to be important, but the technology will make meetings more accessible to a much wider audience. So I honestly don't think there's going to be a time when in-person meetings, unless the world shuts down and climate change says we can't move anywhere, and let's hope we don't get to that point. But I think there's always going to be a demand and a need and a wish for people to meet face-to-face and in person. We all know that from our own personal experiences, that you get far more done. You have those serendipitous moments, the sparks that fly. But as Thomas says, it's that verification point. You want to know that you are speaking to the person. Now, sure, you might be speaking to a hologram of somebody at some point at the same time as you're talking to somebody in person. I have no doubt that the technology will blow all of our minds, and I can't even imagine right now what it might be, because who knows. But it's exciting. But human beings need human beings, and we need to make sure that we use the technology in the right way, and we also use and create experiences in person that cannot be replaced by this kind of webinar, I guess.
Yeah. Now, and I think just back to data, I think what will shift, or what will create the augmented, or let's call the spatial world or mixed reality world, data will be imperative to be able to facilitate that. So registration signups, people doing, what their likes are, what people they want to meet, who they want to discuss things with, that will all start creating a picture, and therefore it will then be able to create a augmented or a personalized world. Now, it shouldn't detract from what it physically feels like when you're going on a trade show or at an association meeting or at a conference, but it should enhance the delegate experience. And I think one of those areas that it would probably take off far quicker in the association sector is on the learning stuff. So if there's a medical congress and they want to be able to do hands-on, or let's say hands-on experiences, companies like Apple Vision, or Apple with their Apple Vision, it's an expensive product, but these things are all going to become far more consumer grade at a rapid pace. Google's just announced something a month ago, Snapchat, all of them are coming out with their own versions. and it's going to make its way into the mainstream market. So it's going to become far more affordable, as what a mobile smartphone was, a couple of $1,000 at the start, are going to become accessible to even the more emerging markets. So I think as time comes around, these will become far more visible in congresses and at a conference level. But I do see it from an education perspective. It's going to be game changing for people to be able to experience, let's say, trauma scenarios where they can all act out a scenario rather than having to actually do a acting scenario as such. They can actually create it in a digital world or augmented world. So there's a lot of applications, and I think it can benefit, and this still brings it to the fact that you can then do it in person, and that could be a good hook for people to actually be attending congresses and association events where, you can only experience that when you're there. So rather than trying to do it via a virtual thing or a hybrid element, this is that one thing that could actually give you that real takeaway or real tangible outcome to say, wow, I was at this event and we're able to actually act out a crisis scenario or something that was a learning tool, something that can't really be emulated without physically putting props in place. So that's one application I can really see it breaking into the sector quite a lot. But there's a lot of other applications that you could use mixed reality in. But without data, that is not going to be doable. So we need to understand what the organizer wants, what their objectives are, what the exhibitors expectations are, and what the event planners' expectations are, and what their outcomes are. And through that, you just keep building onto it. So it's imperative, once again, that you get a human behind it to actually put all that data in. And that is no doubt the same with the database that we have. Without our members feeding that data in, it helps us just to build a much more comprehensive overview of each of those congresses that are taking place.
Yeah, and I think the ICCA BI Coopetition that you run of like encouraging your members to really utilize the database, both from kind of inputting data and then using it, is a really great way to encourage everyone to understand that benefit. So, which brings me beautifully, Sarah, to congratulate you on winning the ICCA BI Coopetition, and to invite you to share some of your insights of how you are leveraging that data to be able to win conferences and events for the destinations and venues that you've worked with.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Amanda. Yeah, it's a great new initiative that ICCA introduced last year. Well, in terms of the competition element of it, the ICCA Business Intelligence Coopetition, inviting members to showcase some of the ways that they're using the database to win conferences, and we were delighted to take part and win last year. But I think, the purpose of it is to help. ICCA is all about kind of a family of members, and help one another to learn from the tool that's there as part of your membership. And it's often overwhelming. I mean, there are, over 11,000, 12,000 meetings in there. And where do you start when you're kind of, especially if you're new to it, like where do you start in terms of which conferences to target? So I've got some examples to share now. I'm just going to share my slides, if that's all right. Bear with me. So these are just some of the top tips that we shared with the audience at in Abu Dhabi at the ICCA Congress last year. I've not done all of the presentation, but I've shared some tidbits which I think will be useful. Apologies for any of you who've heard it before, but I think some of it is really useful. I hope the feedback has been good. So hopefully you'll learn something from this as to how you can really make the most of the data that's in the ICCA Business Intelligence tool. So the very first example is all about having a sector-first approach to your new business development. It's our mantra. I'm sorry, it really is. An acronym happens to be the same as our company name with SFA, sector-first approach, but it's very much what we believe is an important way to fine-tune your strategy when you're looking at which conferences to approach and why you should, and also help you to be more strategic and use your resources better. So by focusing on your sectors within your city, that are your economic strengths, your academic strengths, and your local government priorities, and the ones that kind of meet in the middle of that. But to really drill down into those, it's not just good enough to understand your top key sectors. You've really got to drill down into the details. So this is one client that we work for in Edmonton in Canada, who've got some key, really great key sectors there. You can see seven of them there. Machine intelligence is one. And we had a list of keywords that we use for clients where artificial intelligence is one of their key sectors. Another key sector for them was biological sciences, one that perhaps we weren't so familiar with. So we developed a list of keywords ourselves using our new teammates that we rely on. So you can see us developing a list of keywords around the topic of biological sciences. We then take one of those keywords and you turn to the ICCA Business Intelligence database, where they have a section where you can use meeting keywords as a search filter. So you put in there mathematical biology, obviously your other search criteria in terms of size and rotation, whatever you do to define it. And in this case, it came up with one conference for us to target, which helps a lot better than 11,000. And very helpfully, quite often the decision-making information is there with a link directly from the database. And that enabled us to understand what the meeting requirements were. We were able to understand that they needed a local member. So we found a local member on behalf of our clients, engaged with them. And then once we got all of the kind of pieces in the jigsaw in place, handed it to Edmonton, they bid for it. And I'm delighted to say they won it. But you can see how we were taking their top level sectors and drilling down to reduce the number of conferences that we were targeting to find something that was much more appropriate for them. So here again, you can see that's the meeting keywords section that I was talking about. And another example here you can see is if you were in Faro and Portugal, for example, you would know that you've got the Algarve Centre of Marine Sciences. So you might just look for conferences around marine sciences, but actually what you need to do is drill down a little bit further. And we uncovered that marine pollution and environmental health was a key topic. And then we developed a list of keywords around that. So aquaculture, marine organisms, blue carbon. So a long list of keywords, which then helped us to identify particular conferences that were appropriate for the city. Another example here is Oslo in Norway. Now, this isn't a key sector for them, but it's something that we knew when we were looking at where they had clusters of excellence and they were highly reputed internationally, was to do with equine-assisted psychotherapy. So again, we looked for a number of keywords where we could use that information to understand what conferences might be on that topic, but aren't necessarily about those words in particular. So it could be equine-assisted learning, adapted horseback, horse interventions. And so that then produced a list of conferences that we can target. You might be sitting there and thinking, well, we don't really have that much intellectual assets within our city. Where do we go then? If we're looking at the ICCA database, how do we fine-tune our research from that? Well, here's another example of one of our clients, which is Montreux in Switzerland. So they are part of the Lausanne-Montreux Congress marketing collaboration. So where Lausanne had brilliant universities, Montreux doesn't. It has a great hospitality school, but what it does have is a fantastic jazz festival every year, and it's very well known for that. So we turned to the ICCA database, and we put in our search criteria in terms of rotation and attendance. But we then looked at the subject matter. We looked at other conferences around the topic of music. So that might be music straight, music archives, composing, etc. So that brings us up with a subsection of the database all around music. But then we also thought, well, what other cities might also be renowned for jazz, and therefore conferences go to those cities on a regular basis? So we thought of New Orleans, New York, Paris, etc. We then also thought about, well, what other cities are similar to Montreux in terms of size and capacities, but also in terms of kind of cultural assets. And we looked at Monaco, Lake Como, etc. So that is all helping us to hone down our search and produce a shortlist, which we can then work from. And you can apply that obviously to any topic or any asset that you have as a city. Another aspect of the database that we shared in our entry for the Coopetition was around the known suppliers filter that is there. So if you go into the ICCA database, the search criteria, there is a section that is to do with the known supplier. So that means the host, the venue that they've used to host the conference in the past. So you go to the meeting partners, you put in the known supplier. So if you are a venue that is an aquarium or a zoo, or you are a museum, or even if you're just, an exhibition or conference center or a golf resort, you can go in and see which other suppliers have been used and where the association has selected them specifically. And when you do that selection, it will then come up with a selection of conferences that have been hosted in that venue. And then you'll see the result options can be filtered either by series or editions. So if you select on the editions section, you can see exactly which year went to your venue. So again, an example of where we've used that knowledge and that known suppliers button is when we were doing some work in our local area. Chester Zoo is quite close to us, one of the top zoos, certainly in the UK, but internationally. And we discovered that there was a conference called the Annual Conferences for the Society for Reproductive and Infant Psychology that regularly was hosted at zoos or in cities that had a really big asset in terms of their zoo. And of course, just looking at it, you wouldn't know why, but when we drilled down further, it was clear that what they're really interested in is being close to somewhere where they could study the reproductive infant psychology of monkeys. So that's where you really have to know your stuff. You have to understand the topic and use the database in order to drill down. And then finally, the other aspect that we shared within our entry was to do with the benchmarking tool, which Thomas mentioned earlier, where you can benchmark yourself against others. And I think this is equally important in terms of your use of data. Data is not just about the data that's in the database about conferences themselves and the size and the rotation. It's really understanding your competitors. What conferences are going to your competitors? How are they doing? Who's coming up? Why are they coming up? So this tool is really useful. Obviously, ICCA produce their rankings every year, which you can use. And this year was particularly helpful. There was a lot of insights shared within the ICCA rankings. But using this tool, for example, I've just used the two charts here. You've got one chart. I've just picked 5 Spanish cities here. That shows the number of meetings per year, and you can see some are on the way up, some are maybe on the way down, and you might think, oh goodness, look, Barcelona and Madrid look like they're on the way down. But actually, when you look and drill in terms of the number of participants, you can see there's an upward trend. So it's getting to understand your competitors and also where you sit amongst that. And we shared this as well, just as an example of what we've done for other clients, where we've used this to help clients to understand where they sit, because you can get a lot of information out there. We produce reports where we've shown with different comparisons, different cities samples, but also where those meetings been held. Are there venues in this city that is gathering more of the conferences than others? Where are they sitting, etc. So that data, that knowledge can really help you to be more strategic and effective in your new business interventions. So I hope that was useful, and I'm going to now stop sharing and hand over back to Amanda.
That was brilliant, Sarah. Thank you. I think really insightful. And I think seeing that the use of data at both ends of that journey, really, of being able to use the data to research which conferences and events are going to be really useful for a city or destination to actually put the time and effort into going for, but then also using data to research and see how do they pull that proposition together, I think just really shows how vital data can be throughout that whole decision-making process.
Yeah.
And as a group, I'd be really interested to hear from each of you in terms of your thoughts on how decisions are being driven by data. So when it comes to putting those proposals in, is having that data and insight kind of built into the kind of the thought process? Is that what is winning bids for destinations, or is it other factors, or a combination of both? Quite a loaded question, so feel free to just take part of it.
I mean, I would say that the sector-driven approach definitely will affect your ability to win conferences. I think the change, as I said earlier, it's not just about, I mean, look, frankly, price is still a big factor, and that is, you know, undoubtedly, if you, I know ICCA's done a survey in terms of association decision making criteria, North Star have done it. Top of the rank is always price, and then it's probably accessibility and, you know, have you got the right facilities? Clearly, those kind of three factors are always key. But drilling down further, because, you know, frankly, even with those three, you've probably got lots of other cities and destinations that will equally compare with you on that. It's about your fit with them in terms of their purpose. So are you, when they bring their conference to your city, are they going to be able to deliver a meeting with purpose? Are they going to be able to leave that legacy behind? Are they going to be able to have an impact on the community? Are they going to be able to engage with the local intellectual assets you've got there, the stakeholders, the policymakers? Are they there? In which case they can deliver a really enriched, amazing experience. And we, you know, touching on what we talked about before in terms of, you know, the benefit of in-person compared to live. Well, having all of those assets locally, you've got a domestic audience that's going to attend. So, you know, we're all concerned with attendance numbers. So are you going to have enough people that are interested in the topic and it's relevant to them locally that are going to come? Or are you going to be able to put on a program that is kind of like going to blow everybody out the water, that's not going to cost you a fortune because you haven't got to pay lots of people to fly them in first class? You know, though all those factors are really important. And of course, the other thing, of course, is sustainability. And that links to both those points, because one, sustainability credentials will become more and more important in terms of decision making. They will be looking for venues and destinations that can meet those sustainability targets or help them meet their offset their carbon imprint of doing it. But also just in terms of delegates attending, they need to have a reason to come that's more than just the few days of the conference.
Yeah, just to echo Sarah's, it is so many factors that take into account on that. But I do think the biggest is, you know, the cost. And obviously a lot of organizations, especially in Europe, are considering, you know, the legacy and impact that it has to a destination. But sometimes that is also, yeah, as much as that is high on the criteria list, at the same time, you know, as much as a destination is like, let's say Amsterdam, for instance, huge legacy and impact initiatives, but, you know, sometimes the hotel prices are really just not feasible for some events to be able to host there. And then, you know, you have to consider other options, and then accessibility become a huge thing. But I do think, yeah, there's been so much being put into that, but I do think, or research, and I think still, the price is going to be the top thing. And I'm just thinking, yeah, just look back at figures, but you know what our events are contributing per day is $726, you know, per day per delegate. So that's quite a lot of economic value that is being offered to a destination. And I don't think that makes its way over to the higher ups, let's say the stakeholders in government, that they actually appreciate what that is done. And coming back to the initial conversation about, you know, us being a voice, not just ICCA, but all our industry organizations that are in business events, we have to make those aware of what the value of this is. Quality over quantity, and the quality stands there in terms of how much a delegate spends at a conference. And medical congresses and association meetings lead the way as to per person spend in a destination. So I think it stands testament to how strong our industry is, how valuable data is within all of this, and how it can only get better from here, you know, and grow and continually grow. I think Kai Hottendorf had actually mentioned it in his previous post on LinkedIn as to how much economic benefit there is and how much there isn't actually a spotlight shone on it. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And Joanna, from our kind of other clients aside from ICCA point of view, is there anything that you particularly have noticed that you think should be valuable or considered? I know obviously we do convention bureau websites where it's talking about the wider experience, but is there anything else that you think is worth our attendees thinking about?
Absolutely. I think our websites do a phenomenal job of really showcasing the destination's appeal, making sure that all their unique experiences and the culture and entertainment is showcased on their sites through great assets. And that really is another huge driver for people to enjoy both business and leisure, which I think is helpful to what Sarah said, to make sure that they stay longer and enjoy, more than just the meeting.
Because that's the key, right? You want people to want to come to your destination as much as host their event, that you want them to do
Keep
extra
coming back.
things. Yeah, exactly. Well, we're coming to the end of our kind of set questions before we go into the Q&A, and I'm hoping to start seeing some questions pop up in the Q&A. So if you have any questions that you'd like answered, please start thinking about those and popping those in now. But to round up from this discussion, which for me has been really helpful, and I've been scribbling down my own notes as we've been talking, could you each give your top 2 practical tips for how destinations could leverage data for success? Who shall I come to first? Sarah, I'll come to you first.
Okay, thank you. Well, of course, it's adopt a data-driven strategy and a sector-first approach. Create your own algorithm of why, which conferences are going to come. So that would be my top tip. And then the second one is echoing some of the points that Thomas has made about the need for data to provide evidence to stakeholders to the value of our meeting. I mean, it was really great to see in the ICCA rankings a couple of examples of small but powerful meetings. That size doesn't necessarily matter. It might do in terms of direct economic impact, but those small meetings can often be as important as a larger one in terms of what they're doing in terms of the local impact and changing policy and driving forward innovation, etc. So my message would be for everybody, if they are a venue or a convention bureau, to start tracking that, write case studies. Some people like Destination Canada are doing some amazing case studies, but it's up to each and every one of us to track our own meetings that are in and start writing some case studies. They don't have to be complicated, but track that data in your own way.
Brilliant, thank you. Thomas?
Yeah, so I would say turn data into conversations and not just into reports. I think it's being seen as there's a bit of a stigma around data that, it's just zeros and ones and but there's a lot more to it. It should create strategy. It should work together and align or be together with your strategy. It should then be a collaborative effort. So that's where I think that's number one. Number two, I think data shouldn't, especially in ICCA's world and us working collaboratively with venues and all of that, bidding for pieces of business, it should be a collaborative and partnered approach rather than a competitor view. I think we're all here to benefit from that and make this a better world. And I think we should all be relying or working together as venues, destinations, organizers, and so forth to enhance the data that we're gathering from each other. Every piece of information is a golden nugget, and that will only improve on how people will bid and be able to win and showcase their destinations and venues and so forth. So I think, we shouldn't view it as competitors. We should look at it as data sharing, and we should be open to be able to be doing that so that we can collaboratively work on winning business. And I think that everyone can benefit from that.
Lovely. I like that ethos. And Joanna?
Yeah, absolutely. I think coming from a space where, we are in a world of helping our clients kind of keep up with their databases, it makes sense to share that one of the things I hear often is if you want high quality insights, you need high quality input. So I would clean, organize, validate your data sets, but also centralize it, in a one ecosystem like the Simpleview data engine, for instance. And that's the way to analyze patterns, personalize those experiences, make agile, data-driven decisions.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, we do have time now to do Q&A, so we've got about 10 minutes left of the session. So if anyone wants to ask any questions to our panelists, please do either pop them in the chat or the Q&A. And whilst you have a think about that, I will ask another question from my long list of things that I've thought of whilst we've been chatting. Sarah, you talked about using AI to support in research. Are there particular things that you would tend to use AI for more than others? Conscious of things like ChatGPT not particularly being great for security, do you use it for more kind of broad brush stuff to save you from trawling through websites, or are there any things that you would lean on it for more than others?
Not particularly. I mean, we use it every day, more and more frequently, and we definitely use it for research. I mean, ChatGPT is pulling on lots of different frameworks. So we might be using this Google Scholar framework that they've got it, you know, the research, the ones that are more academic orientated. And it's all about the prompts. It's all about checking and verifying that information once we've got it. But yeah, no, I mean, we've got some things in the pipeline that I won't reveal too much, but you know, we will, you know, AI I mean, ChatGPT, let's not forget, it's just a chatbot, really. We've been using chatbots for years. So it's about developing the knowledge of how to use the agents that are out there, developing your own. So we're using it all the time, whether that is for verifying data about local hosts, conferences in terms of their past history, where they've been, the delegate numbers, whether it's about whether they've published a call for bids. It's all out there, but you know, as I say, quite often the data comes up and it isn't accurate when you actually drill down. Very often it is, and it's getting better, but it is important to verify it.
Brilliant, thank you. We have had a question come in around kind of using the ICCA database, but noticing that unfortunately some valuable data, like how many attendees and conferences have had, is often unfortunately missing. Are there any plans to improve this? Now, Thomas, should I come to you for this? I think it's a kind of, I can predict what the answer might be, but
Yeah, so ICCA can only verify publicly available data. So whatever the convention bureaus or the reporting parties submit to ICCA is what we use. So we will only investigate really or validate, is this event, did it happen? Is it true as what they said? And are the parties that they're reporting back on the correct parties, if it was a PCO, an AV supplier, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of delegate numbers, that we rely really on the member, let's say the host venue, to verify that data, to tell us, okay, if it was 1,200 or an estimated number, that should be reported back to the Convention Bureau that is reporting it back to ICCA, or other party that's reporting it back. But we really do rely on the membership to report that. And on the ICCA website, on My ICCA, on the BI tool, you can click at the bottom right and quickly report a fact and say, okay, this event has changed its name, or these are the numbers that we had or that we know of, so that we can quickly then implement into the database. So if you come across those, do let us know. If you know the numbers, then do let us know what the numbers were. But we really do rely on the membership to be able to inform us on that. So if you are the host venue and you have reported it to your reporting party, do let us know. So if you Amsterdam Rye or the Excel Centre or Manchester, and you've hosted an event and you haven't seen those numbers on there, then please do inform us and we can happily amend it and put those numbers in. I mean, hopefully they've grown over the years, but you know, that's what we expect of our membership, just to support us on that, especially since we have 12,000 different events listed on there.
brilliant, thank you. We've had another question in asking, and forgive me, I'm just going to read this verbatim. In the competitive landscape where destinations and venues are competitively trying to win high-value conferences and events, how can data from delegate demographics to economic impact insights be most effectively used to influence decision makers and win business?
You just repeat the second half of it.
Yeah, so how can data from delegate demographics to economic impact insights be most effectively used to influence decision makers and win business?
Well, in terms of the demographic of the the delegates, it's about, who have you got there in terms of policymakers, who have you got there in terms of, reputation, the scientists, etc., and what they're doing. But I'm not sure I quite understand the question, I'm afraid.
I think it's a great question, but it feels very chunky. So I think from my understanding, and Donna, who has asked the question, please feel free to elaborate or put your hand up and I can turn your mic on so you can ask it yourself, because I might be fumbling it. From what I'm understanding is, how can, when you're trying to win an event, you understand your delegates better and the economic impact to pitch it in a way that it will appeal most to the event organizer? It's an interesting question. I think it's very much about that, what you were talking about, Sarah, of really understanding what it is, how does it fit with your city's vision, or your venue's vision of what do they want to be known for, and then kind of shaping it in that way.
Yeah, so it's about understanding your city's inward investment strategy, how that fits with the sector and the specifics of the particular conference, how you can get the support of the various stakeholders within the city in your bid, and make sure that there is that understanding that it's a citywide bid, that you've got that collaboration, that you've got partnership across the city. It's not just a venue or just a convention bureau pitching for it. They've got that, or even just one local host. I mean, the local host in generally will pull together a local organising committee and have all of those different players as part of the team that's actually going for it. But it is, having that understanding and thinking about as well, going back to your knowledge of your competitors, thinking about in the past, what previous conferences, what did they do in terms of legacy and impact to support the organizer? So is there a case study? Is there some information on the report from the conference or on the website? Or pick up the phone or an email to your ICCA partner, the previous organizer, and ask them, because they'll be able to give you ideas. There's no skin off their nose to do that, because they won't get that conference back for many years. But it's having that kind of shared knowledge. And also what would be fantastic is to see some of these legacy projects following on from one year to the next. And then we can get some proper measurement of those legacy projects from one year to the next. And that will help in terms of quantifying that non-direct economic impact. So I hope that answered the question, but
I've allowed Donna to speak so that she can let us know if that has answered her question.
Yeah, it absolutely has, actually. And I think it's I was trying to get to that point where it can't be just how do you use this data, and how do you use kind of, like you say, going to the venues where the destinations have hosted before, and how you can use what they've done, how they've been successful, because I know we've done that previously, and that has absolutely helped secure new business. But things like that, and just having the right types of people at the event, etc., will obviously encourage more delegates to attend. But I was just trying to kind of ask a question which would get a bit of thought-provoking sort of of an answer, really.
Thanks, Colette. The other point to make again about the data is looking back. Is the conference growing? Is it shrinking? If it's shrinking, why is that? It's not necessarily because it's not successful. It might be a change in strategy within the association. So that's what I talked about, doing your homework, is talking to the association and understanding, have they changed their strategy? Have they split the meeting up into regional meetings? Are they feeling that they're having a hybrid structure? Whatever it is, don't just look at that number that's either in the ICCA database, or if you do your own homework, and we have our own data set of the size of the conferences, so we can see the trends that are there. But that's about understanding that data. If it's going up, is it going down? Why is that? Really making some effort to understand and uncover the rationale behind that, and not just assuming it's because the event is failing.
If I can add a plug as well. So ICCA does a business exchange twice a year, which is at the Frankfurt IMEX as well as the ICCA Congress. But beside that, what it facilitates is you, especially on this question, is to be able to pick the brain of the previous host of a congress that hosted something, say in Paris or in Toronto or something, if it's a lucrative piece of business that you're after, where you can't really get the answers out of your public sources, it allows you to pick the brain of the winning or previous winning city to be able to say, okay, this is what it took for us to win this, but what was that one thing that stood out from that destination that made it win, and what was the objective of that organization, because it could be different in Canada to when they come to Europe as to what their objective is. But I would say leverage that, but also don't be shy to pick up the phone or just say, hey, I want to win this piece of business. I'm bidding on it. You're not going to get it, like Sarah says, for maybe another 5 years or 10 years. What is it that got you to win this? And I'll be honest, 9 out of 10 times, it's quite an open, honest conversation. It's a very different area than corporates. I think our members and our sort of sector is very open to share that information. So I would say, yeah, it might seem a bit unorthodox to do it that way, but I would say do that.
Oh, we're lost Amanda.
We lost Amanda.
Oh, but yeah, I would say definitely, yeah, I think, and I think Sarah, from your experience, I think it's the same. It's people are very open to actually share that information.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I would definitely second that. I think we've come to the end of the session, so maybe Amanda's been kicked out, and I'm sure everyone needs to go. So maybe we should just say goodbye and let everyone go, and I hope it's been really, really useful session.
It really was. I thank you, Sarah, for being a super user on our platform. So thank you, everybody, for joining. And Thomas, it was really great catching up with you and everybody that was here.
Yeah, thank you to all the members and those that attended, and for your time, and great insights from you both, and enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.